I remember we were at a conference, and I guess it was this Vail conference. It was maybe called the KeyBank SaaS conference then. And there was some social hour, and I saw you sitting at a table, and I maybe had met you once or twice before then. And I remember I sat down and talked to you. It was my favorite part of the whole conference. Had nothing to do with the conference, was sitting down and talking to you. And the thing that you talked about was culture. And you talked about, I remember that. I remember you talking about culture and values. And we were still at Campus Logic, we were still trying to work through a few things. We had good foundation, but it was never enough. But I remember you saying that. It had a huge impact on me. So thanks for the impact you've had on me and my own journey. Do you ever feel like you talk about purpose, mission, or values too much? I mean, it almost feels like it's never too much. Like, do you feel like you have to constantly, cultural warrior means you're constantly beating the drum, I think. Has that been your experience?
Yeah. I don't think it can ever be talked about too much. And it doesn't, for us anymore, it's so part of ingrained in our vernacular, ingrained in, part of our interview process. Like, it's just so intertwined with everything that it's not like I have to come up there, hey, remind everybody, hey, here's our core values. It's already there.
It's not a side part of the company. It is the company.
It is the company.
Yep.
It does come up, though, I feel like I am the one that sometimes has to bring it up when we're making big decisions in the business, to bring it back to the core of what we do and why we do it.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
That's the North Star. Yeah.
To be reminded of what the North Star is, because you can get distracted with, valuation and all of these other things, profitability, and which are all super important to the business. But at the same time, if you're going to make decisions that stray away from that North Star, then you have to understand what the consequences are going to be.
Do you think you developed your culture value system with your employees at the right time? You said it was around 2010, 2011. Do you think you should have done it? Ever wonder if you should have done it a little earlier or a little later?
I mean, in retrospect, I would say no, mainly because it was ingrained already. It just wasn't defined and written down in words. It wasn't explicit, right?
So organically it was there already.
Yeah, it was organically there. It was being lived by everybody. It was understood, but not explicit. Yeah. And that was the time. The timing was, we had about 40 people in the company. And we were about to double in size, right? And so we felt this cultural shift that was happening. That translation, that osmotic way of passing it on to somebody else wasn't quite working anymore. And so that's when we said, no, we need to sit down and figure this out and truly be explicit, and truly define what it means to be a WebPTer.
And it can all get away from you if you're not explicit about it. It's easy to let people come into the culture that are not don't fit if you're not really careful about it. So I love that. That's a lot to scale from 40 people to 1,200 people I think you have now, and have such a strong culture is really incredible.
Well, and people have to understand too, it's not exactly what it was back then. It's evolved.
Yep.
Right? So it's not like I hold on to the truth that want to be back in 2010. And I think that's something that founders get accused of sometimes is, we just want to go back to the way it was.
Yeah.
And if you're not willing to evolve with the business itself and understand, well, what are the priorities of the business today, and how do those things, we've had to revisit this quite a bit through this whole digital first transformation. How do we get people engaged with the values? How do we infuse those into now this new normal of people working from home, that you're not side by side, you're not, having hallway conversations, right? And so how do you do that? And it's not been easy, I'll say that, because we were such an ingrained in-person culture to just overnight be transformed.
I think you made an amazing distinction between two things. I think you said priorities can change, strategic direction can change, or something like that, but your values have been constant, you said earlier in the conversation. And that's an interesting, I think a lot of people don't fully appreciate the nuance there, that values are unchanging. This is how we're going to behave through the duration of the company, but how we execute what we're pursuing may move around a little bit over time. Is that fair to say?
I would totally say that, and that if it's if you don't hold true to that in hiring that next hire, that next leader, then it becomes harder and harder to stay true to that, especially, top leaders. What's been really amazing to me is that culture has been something that has been celebrated and told to us as a differentiator in our business by both venture capital and private equity. Like, that was one of the top reasons that Warburg Pincus loved our business, was the culture of our business. It was obviously the numbers and all their opportunity to grow and make money off of us, for sure. But one of the things that they believed would help us get there was that strong foundation of our culture.
I love that. Culture as a kind of shareholder value creator.
Yes.
I love that.
Yes.
And part of your culture is inclusion and diversity, which is something that's close to your heart. Can we talk about Rising Tide?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, this evolution of not spending as much time in your business, kind of like you, Greg,
Yes.
like, you got to stay busy, right?
Trying to have impact.
Trying to have impact. That, at the end of the day, is probably the most important thing to me as well. And so Rising Tide is a scholarship program that I started specifically for doctor of physical therapy students from underrepresented backgrounds who are getting their DPT, and then also for residents. So if you graduated from your doctorate program, you have the opportunity to go specialize through a residency program. And diversity has just been a real issue in our profession. We're nowhere near in the percentages of people choosing to become PT to reflect the population of this country. And, we've done surveys of demographic information, getting demographic information from our industry. We do an industry report at What PT every year. We've done, I think, for 10 years. We looked at the demographics, and every year, people would be saying, oh, there's changes, there's this happening, but the numbers would never change, or very small changes. And so, being a person of color and a woman in this industry, I just said, well, I'm going to do something about it. I have the means, and I have the opportunity, and I have a platform. And so we are now in our third year, and we do meaningful scholarships. So we calculated that on average, the student debt that students are getting are somewhere in the range of 80 to 100,000. And so our scholarships that are renewable, they're $14,000 a year for 3 years renewable. So somewhere around, $45,000, which is roughly half of what you would pay to go to a PT program in this country. So I still wanted them to have skin in the game. So it's not free education. You still need to, understand that you've got skin in the game, but it's it releases the biggest barrier of people of color to want to apply to become a physical therapist. So,
do you have a personal connection? Do you develop a personal connection with every recipient? That would be really that would be really rewarding to me, I would think.
You're so spot on, Greg, and you're speaking my love language now. My relationships with people and building that connection is part of what I think is actually more valuable than the check that we write. Mm-hmm. Jim Armstrong was a big sort of inspiration, and he has built a foundation and a program in Mexico in which they have scholars that they have down in Rancho Feliz, which is just over the border, a small, very poor town that he's helped to have many of their students go through college, which they could have never dreamed of going to college before. And so he was a little bit of an inspiration in sort of planning of all this, but every scholar that we have each year, we meet with them quarterly. So we're not just writing checks and helping with tuition. We are truly building a community and a network of these now individuals who will get to know each other. And then we have the second years that are mentoring the first years. And so every quarter we meet with them, and then every year I bring them here to Phoenix. We have dinner at my house.
I love that.
Yeah, and we have a full day. We call it the North Star Summit. And so we have dinner at my house, and then the next day we do a full day of programming. So education, business education, student debt education. How do you handle your student debt? We have mentors now all across the country. And sort of now our next phase is actually engaging with employers. So DE&I is a big deal of trying to hire, people of color within your organizations. And so now we have a true pipeline of these amazing scholars who are, in my opinion, head and shoulders above many of the graduates that'll come out because of all the additional education that they've had and training that they've had with us. And so now it's really getting them in a soft landing of a place that they're going to be the future leaders.
The dollars are impactful, but that's a serious flywheel when you add all the mentoring and like peer mentoring plus mentoring from you, plus just the community you're building. That's incredible.
Yeah.
That's a serious flywheel.
It's pretty awesome.
Is this work, do you think, inspiring other software founders to do similar work? Are you seeing a ripple effect?
I'm not going to take credit for a lot of that. I mean, you've got people like Warren Buffett and others who are committing to, their pledge of giving away 99% of their funds. We have the Founders Fund, right, of people that are committing to give back to this community, the ecosystem. So it's just another way of, philanthropist is now part of, in my title, in giving back to an industry that's given me so much. And again, just trying to make a difference, trying to make an impact.
It feels like that is a differentiator for Phoenix. That Phoenix really cares about philanthropy and giving back to the community. I don't know if you see that maybe you do in other big metros.
I think so. I mean, I know they dubbed the early, Phoenix startup community as the word was not patience, but
generosity.
Generosity, sorry.
Yeah, generosity and performance.
Yes.
Yep.
Yes. It was generosity, right? And giving back to each other and, getting the flywheel started in the ecosystem, right? Of getting a few wins and those people are giving back into the community. So I think that's true, but I don't know. I think that's probably true that's how you build an ecosystem, right? So it's got to be true in other areas. I know in Austin, so obviously San Francisco is now so ingrained with this and where it all started, but that's how it started too, right? You had some of these big organizations and companies that had big wins and they came back and planted in San Francisco. And you have people who've worked in their companies now gone off and started all these other companies, right? So
yeah, what I think we're seeing is a compounding of both talent and capital. And you can see, I'm sure there's more examples than this, but I'll use Jacob Finley as an example, who was at was at WebPT, goes and starts Full Bay, builds a successful company. He'll build multiple companies, but that's a compounding of talent.
That's right.
And then there's also a compounding of capital happening in Arizona as well too. So, and WebPT's been a huge part of that. What else is on the list?
Well, can I just expand on that a little bit? Because I think that is, people often think about the founders only and the impact that they're going to have in building this flywheel, right? And whether or not they're going to be generous with their money or their time. But what you just talked about, I think, is so important because when we first started our company and we got to that middle stage, we had to go and recruit outside of Arizona because there weren't people here that had built companies from, 20 to 100 million in SaaS.
Yeah, it's hard to find a venture-backed CFO in Arizona if there have been no other venture-backed CFOs, right? That have done it before.
Right.
Yeah.
And so now you've got this magnet of company with all these companies here now and companies that have made it, Campus Logic and others, right? That have gone through this cycle. Who now you have all of these employees, and obviously we'd love to have every employee stick with us, but that's not reality. But they go off and they're now employed with other companies. They're going to help them grow and get to that next level and so on, right? So I just think that's so understated to build up the Phoenix ecosystem. Like we have to get people to stay here and have companies that they find interesting and have growth opportunity.
I agree. I think... And I think you're seeing that happen, but I totally agree. Thank you for elaborating on that.
Heidi, what's a piece of advice that you've received in your journey that has really stuck with you?
Oh my gosh, so many. Probably the first one is to not take yourself so seriously. I think as you take on a lot of burden to have all the answers when you're, especially in the early stage, and so things need to be perfect and have all the right answers, and the ability to fail was not necessarily in my vernacular. That's not innately in me. But understanding that more as I've gone through this process, and that you aren't perfect, and you're going to make mistakes, and you're going to learn more from your mistakes than all of the successes, I think is probably the best advice that people have told me, is just don't take yourself so seriously all the time.
I think that's such great advice. I do think it's hard for founders, because part of what has made you successful is, and I mean this in absolutely the best way possible, intensity, right? And resilience and duration. So you've got to just drive and grind to make the company successful. But it's such great advice to temper that with not taking yourself too seriously. And that is hard, I think, a hard thing to do, but such great advice.
Yeah. Thanks. Yeah, and I've taken that to heart in many different ways. I mean, a question that you get asked a lot in interviews and stuff, well, what's your spirit animal? And I've always thought about this.
Really?
Yeah, I don't know. It's always like an icebreaker for whatever reason. So maybe we should talk about Greg. What's your spirit animal? But the one that I've come up with over time is a chameleon. And part of that is my ability to blend with, and I don't know, I've analyzed this a lot, as you can tell, as I've come up with this, but being, half Japanese and half Caucasian, growing up in an environment, with both cultures and all of that, I've had to blend in over time, and being an athlete and, a woman in technology, there's a lot of blending that has to happen over time, and in sort of this thicker skin of taking on whatever the environment that you're in. But I think that's really important if you're going to have longevity in a business. And as we talked about, the evolution of being able to adapt is really important. So anyway, that's my spirit animal.
I like that. What's your spirit animal?
I'll have to think about that for a future podcast. I've given no thought to that, but I'm inspired. I'm inspired to do that. What are you most proud of in your journey here? What are you most, when you look back so far, and I know you've got years ahead here, but what are you most proud of so far, if you could pinpoint one thing or a couple things?
Well, if we want to talk about it from the business side, it's got to be the impact on people, impact on employees. I mean, we've had thousands of people be part of What PT over the years. And I hope that, we've had some small impact. I know people have come back and talked to me about, the culture piece and how important, how much they've learned about culture and what they look for in their next employer because they had such an amazing experience with us. With the, financial success that we've had of, generational wealth that we've been able to provide to multiple employees within our organization over the years, just with equity and how we've, given away equity with quite a few employees over the years. That's definitely, and then of course the impact on the industry. As a physical therapist, you just don't get this opportunity to change something that is so close to you and really see it in real time, how you've changed people's lives and, colleagues. It's just not, sometimes I have to pinch myself because you don't really understand that impact until people come up and tell you. But that's on the business side. Personally, somehow I became a mom through this whole process. Yeah. And so my beautiful 7-year-old daughter, and now I have a blended family with 2 other beautiful twin daughters who just went off to college. So we're kind of half empty nesters. So the groundedness and the importance of family and friends is also something that I think is sometimes can get lost in the whole grand scheme of success. And I've never lost, I've been proud of myself never to lose sight of what is probably most important.
Yeah, I've loved that. I've struggled with balance on that. On the second point, what I just feel compelled to say on the first point, one thing that I feel so strongly about is sustainable growth companies with healthy cultures. And I say sustainable growth, I mean especially a healthy culture. Can transform individuals, families, and communities and industries, that in a way that almost no other institution can. So I love that you shared that, because that's part of my personal, mission to help there be more sustainable growth companies in Arizona.
And I didn't say that about community, but I think we are one of the OGs that's really helped to build this startup community. But I mean, even in the community where we were, that was really a big part of who we were as a company. I mean, we have this beautiful mural downtown Phoenix that we helped to curate, and that is a legacy of WebPT. There's so many little things that sometimes, I don't know, you don't realize how much impact over the years. It's been a long time. There's been a lot that's transpired, both positively and negatively, but you obviously want to remember the positive.
I love it. Let's go to a couple closing questions, Heidi, here. One, what are you most grateful for? Just real quickly here. You mentioned what you're most proud of, but just something you're grateful for, and then I'll get to the most important question at the very end.
Yeah, I mean, I'm most grateful for my health and my family and friends. That's, at the end of the day, what I'm most grateful for.
I love it. And most importantly,
yes,
best tacos in Arizona.
Oh.
If you're going to go to eat tacos somewhere in Arizona, where it could be anywhere, one of your favorites. I have a thesis that you can get the best tacos in America in Arizona. That's my belief. And so if you're going to go get tacos, someone comes in from out of town, you're going to take your friend to tacos. Where's one of the places you would go?
One of the places is probably Taco Guild.
Oh yeah, I love that place.
So I love their tacos.
The vibe is great too there.
Yes.
The tacos are amazing, but the vibe's great.
I love the long tables.
Keeping score.
Yes.
That
one's
someone said that
Yeah.
before? Oh, nice.
Yeah. That's a good one.
I'm also, because it's walking distance from the house and they're very delicious, is Blanco's is also got
love
great
Blanco's,
tacos.
yeah. So good.
Their chips and salsa is amazing.
Heidi, thank you for being just a beacon in our community in Arizona, building something amazing at WebPT, and thanks for spending time with us today on the Phoenix Founders Podcast.
Well, you're very welcome. It's been an honor. Thank you so much for having me.
The Phoenix Founders Podcast is sponsored by Arizona Venture Development Corp.,